President Trump will apparently stop at nothing to get his long-promised border wall built by Election Day. The Washington Post reporting that includes telling his people to break the law if they have to, because ultimately he'll protect them. Here's what the Post says. When aides have suggested that some orders are illegal or unworkable, Trump has suggested he would pardon the officials if they would just go ahead, aides said. He has waved off worries about contracting procedures and the use of eminent domain, saying, take the land, according to officials who have attended the meetings. The White House told the Post that the president was joking about the pardons, although that was a White House official who did not want to be named. This week, the CBP tweeted out this time-lapse video showing that progress has been made on a portion of replacement wall in Arizona, but that's just a small portion of the 450 new and renovated barriers promised to be completed by next year. Jeff Mason is Reuters White House correspondent. Victoria and Shermichael are back with me. So, Jeff, I was thinking about this as I was reading this Post story this morning and thinking, OK, what if the president was joking? I'm not sure how, if you work inside that White House, you necessarily know. I mean, he says something about Greenland. He says he was joking, and then apparently he's very serious about it. He kind of says, oh, we're sort of looking at Doral, maybe, even though reporting is that people told him that's not a good idea for a G7, a property you own. Now he looks like he's really pushing it hard. So what do you make of this?
Well, Chris, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, the question is, how does one tell? And if it's aides around the president, if it's reporters asking the president questions, I mean, at the G7 over the weekend, when we asked him about whether or not he had second thoughts with regard to the China trade war, he said, I always have second thoughts. And then, later in the day, they backtracked on that and said, oh, no, he has second thoughts about raising tariffs. He should have done them higher. That's just a sort of a good example of the fact that sometimes he'll say things and the White House officials may say, no, he was joking or he wasn't serious. But you can't really tell. And often, as in the examples that you just listed, he's completely serious. And it is, in fact, exactly what he has in mind.
Yeah, I mean, OK, so presumably if he's joking, Victoria, about, whether or not he would give people pardons, is he joking, for example, about eminent domain, about seizing people's land?
No, I think he's very serious about that in terms of eminent domain. I mean, constitutionally, as according to, folks can get their land taken away if it's, quote unquote, for the use of public benefit and they're justly remunerated. So I think that
they're
can
talking
be
about
done.
this, again, as a national security issue.
A public benefit, national security issue. And look, at the end of the day, if the government wants your land, they're probably going to get it. But the deal is it's going to take a lot of years and a lot of money to get that land. In 2006, George W. Bush got the Secure Fence Act passed. So we had over 300 lawsuits regarding eminent domain. About 60 of them are still pending. So it's a very long and arduous process. They get it, but at a very high cost. So when we talk about the border wall, Chris, we talk about, how much it costs to erect a border wall. But most of those figures don't include the hundreds of millions of dollars of legal fees and also of the cost of reimbursing these landowners, which is their land. And for many of these folks, especially in Texas, that has been in their family for hundreds of years. So this is a very complicated issue and not something that can just be done through a pardon that the president grants.
Look, Shermichael, the Post quotes people as saying that the people involved in these discussions say the president has said to them, look, I made a promise to my voters, and how disappointed will they be if I don't deliver on this? Right. That's a very different argument than we have a national security threat at the border.
Right. Well, I think, Chris, the reason the president is beginning to pivot back to immigration is because of a point you stated earlier in the show. It's because the economy is starting to falter. And I think the president has to find something to motivate his base. And the economy, for the most part, is why a significant percentage of folks continue on, at least on the Republican side, continue to stand with this president. But, Chris, as a conservative, I have to say I'm really disappointed in the Republican leadership here because some principles of conservatism prudence, discipline. Those are all things that this president continues to lack. And the idea of eminent domain has been something that conservatives, at least intellectually speaking, have been debating for decades now on it being a position that conservatives are against. And yet you don't see Republicans in my party standing up to this president. You don't see fortitude from leadership. And by that, I mean in the classical sense, the fusion of courage and magnanimity. And so in many ways, I think Donald Trump is continuing to do whatever he wants to do unchecked. And that should be a concern, not to just the country, but to Republicans in leadership. Where's Mitch McConnell? He's been around for a long time. Why isn't he standing up to the president?
So the other thing that the president ran on, besides the wall, obviously, is draining the swamp. And we already mentioned, Jeff, you were at the G7, and that's where he sort of did the sales pitch about Doral. But we're also learning today about Attorney General Barr booking a holiday party, a very expensive holiday party for a lot of people at a Trump hotel. And there it is, $30,000. One of the excuses being that apparently they're just, the other places weren't available on a Sunday in Washington, D.C., weeks before the holiday. Does anybody there have any concern about the idea that the Attorney General, who's supposed to be independent, is spending tens of thousands of dollars at a Trump property?
If there is any concern over here, I haven't heard it. And I think in general, if you look at what White House officials have said on the record and behind the scenes, they love William Barr. I mean, they think he can do no wrong. And I suspect that in terms of him gaining favor with the president, this particular story will do nothing but bolster him. And I think broadly, to your point about draining the swamp, that was a chant that the president encouraged crowds to follow in 2016. And, all evidence, or a lot of evidence anyway, shows that in terms of reality, that's not what he's done in the White House. But it's like a rule that doesn't apply. And there are lots of rules like that haven't applied, politically speaking, to President Trump. And this seems to be one of them.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.